All right. Good evening, everybody. We are live this Monday, and this is a flawed man of God with my friend here, the Rafture, Raf, if you will, and we're here early this evening. Normally, we would be doing a later show, but Raf's schedule was open and available for early this evening, so I made a change because it's better. The content is better when it's not just me rambling on. But I think that some of my rambling was pretty good. Last Friday, it was. I feel like it was the best I'd done so far. Um,
I
on my
enjoyed listening to it.
and I felt, but like I said, I got to redo the title because it was. I didn't get through all the chapters I said I would, but I'll get that fixed later. Anyway, tonight, Raph had reached out to me yesterday evening to say that he wanted to discuss depictions in art and in different media of Christ and Christianity, or at least that's why I feel. That's how I figured you were getting at, and just kind of just have a discussion on that. And I thought that was great. So that's why I said we made the changes. We're here early. And I'm just going to give it over to Raf to do basically the intro while I share this on Facebook. So Raf, take it from here.
Yeah, one of the most interesting conversations that Stu and I have been when we're trying to just get each other's ideas on different topics, and one of them is our different approaches culturally, because we have different religious heritages or tradition or expressions. We have the same heritage, I would say. Different expressions.
Expression on that.
But so we have different approaches to culture and the place that art and beauty has in our various cultures. And so like we were saying earlier on, before we went live, Stu says that he sympathizes with some of the views that I've expressed to him about the Catholic perspective on art and architecture. I think the biggest thing to remember when we're discussing art is the biggest impasse between Protestants and Catholics seems to be the prohibition on creating and worshiping graven images. So that
I feel like it's a sticking point,
right? And
it's a go-to. I know it's a Protestant go-to when the debates arise, right? Mm-hmm. And while my take on things, my take on this is very much the fundamentals of being a follower of Christ. I had a friend earlier today. He was talking about he was taking a take on something that was very much, it was kind of in the weeds, and I told him, I'd be like, yeah, but this is not something that if you believe in it or don't believe in it, it's going to keep you out of heaven, right? It's going to be one of those things where, oh, I guess I was wrong on that. It doesn't have to do with loving your fellow man, loving God, following the tenets of the Bible. It's just maybe you got an impression that was incorrect, and but it doesn't change the way that your faith and God and the path to Christ doesn't really veer off. So I was like, let's worry about other things. And I think I take a much broader approach to that when it comes to the different denominations. When we look at Baptists, I'm non-denominational, so that puts me kind of in the catbird seat a little bit on it. But I'm a non-denominational Protestant, so it does put me a little bit, just not to say at odds, but I'm not fully parallel with the Catholic beliefs. But when we see my opinion is mostly the razzing and the discussions and the debates should be more congenial than some people take it. It's much similar to like when in the military, in my experience, when Marines and Army, Navy, Air Force, we all kind of poke fun at each other because we all have our quirks and stereotypes and everything that's funny. Now, faith is a lot more serious, I think, but at the same time, our goal is to get as many of us into heaven as possible, and not in the, I don't think it's not in Jehovah's Witness sense, but between, your traditional Catholics and Protestants, and those denominations, there's a lot more in common than there are differences. And I think when at the heart of it, the faith and the fundamentals are very much the same. So
Right.
we can have discussions on maybe one thing or another that's maybe dogmatic or something like that, but that, and I'm way off topic here, but circle back. One of the things that a lot of people will hammer out is that they consider, likenesses of Christ, like a crucifix. I don't see many people go into that, but like images of the Virgin Mary, statues and stuff like that, that they find that to be idol worship, where I don't.
It depends on how you approach it, and I feel like a lot of the ways that people approach it have been like aggressive debates.
Yes.
And this might not be a topic that format of conversation is conducive to, like explaining things from each perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like, one thing that, when I was on the show a couple weeks ago, and then that you just said is, the purpose for our traditions is to make sure that we get to heaven.
Right.
And so you can take literally anything and say, will this help me get to heaven or not? And if it can't get you to heaven, you should probably throw it out. The purpose of beauty and art is to help you raise your mind to a higher power, something in your soul that craves for beauty, because it is like nature is beautiful, it's powerful and everything, but when you craft something with your hands that would never occur in nature, that has like a different type of beauty, a beauty that reflects reason, I would say. I think Thomas Aquinas, one of the probably the best people to articulate the tenets of Christianity. He said that there's like three qualities of true beauty, and it's symmetry, clarity, and it might be truth. Like it has to all kind of wrap around those three things for
those
something
tenets.
Really, yeah. And that's how you know that the beauty you're witnessing is a reflection of God being expressed. So let's say, so let's say you go into a church and everything is like in a traditional, like Gothic cathedral.
Right.
It's gargantuan. Everything is pointing up. There's typically going to be equal amounts of statues, windows, pews on either side. Everything's super ornate, but it's all reflecting itself. That's symmetrical.
Right.
The fact that everything is pointed up and your gaze is focused towards the altar, where the actual mass is going to be said.
Right.
That shows that the clarity, the purpose of this work of art is to draw you to worship. It is to draw your mind to forget everything that is on the outside of the doors of the church. And it's actually, I bet there's all kinds of psychological studies.
Oh yeah.
Of, like, if you walk into a modern church, like one that is sort of not thrown together, but just very bland. Like you'll go to modern, like churches built in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and it's like you're walking into a box, and there's not really a whole lot of nothing that draws you to the altar, and a
Right.
lot of them don't have a steeple or anything like that. So it's just, I don't know, it's a different, much different experience.
Yeah, and I'm more of a traditional now. The church that I go to it was actually built in the '60s, but and it's a small church. It doesn't have all the opulency that going to a large cathedral would be. But
I go to a small church too.
yeah, but you
Sometimes
walk
that's what
in.
you got. You use
Yeah,
what
I
you
mean, you
have.
go where you can, and this isn't a knock on folks who don't have or folks who go to a church that doesn't have exactly the same thing that we're discussing here, but we're
Mhm,
talking about niceties, things
mhm.
things that are good to have, the good to have things, and that's
Right.
what I like, because and we were having this discussion because there was a discussion on whether after um the restrictions were lifted in the past over the past several months.
Mhm.
Would we stay in the gymnasium, which is where we were doing it because it had the maximum, we could fit more people in there more easily, we could socially distance them, or do we want to go back to the gym or do we want to go back to the sanctuary? And I was very much pro sanctuary, and part of the reason I did that is when you walk into the sanctuary, you walk in, it's the pews are all heading towards the pulpit, and then you've got the pulpit, and then
Mhm.
behind him you've got where the music and the praise team require whatever we've got for music is there, and then behind that the baptismal, and behind that you've got the stained glass of
Mhm.
Christ, right? And I
What
think
is
he's actually,
depicted? Is it just like Christ standing there, or is there like an actual?
I think he's
Uh,
being, I'm trying, I should know, I stare at it all the time, but I think he's being baptized
okay,
by
that's
John
cool. So
in
you've
that
got John the
anointing. Yeah,
Baptist in there too.
right behind the baptismal, and I think that that's appropriate. But it's also nice, it just, to me, as a more traditional person, it puts me in the zone. There's a solemnness to it. It's a different feel, but it's the same. It gets you in the same zone where I went to. I'm trying to remember where my grandmother's funeral was at. It was at a St. Paul's Catholic Church in Richmond. You go in there and it is like marble,
Mhm.
and it's opulent, right? But it's the same thing. It's the seriousness of it. It's very formal feeling,
Mhm.
and you don't get that when you're meeting in a gym, and when you're in a meeting in a gymnasium or at a school somewhere or at a strip mall, just because your church either doesn't want to have the overhead of a church, a mortgage payment, and all the bills that
Mhm.
come along with it, or they're just getting started and they don't have anywhere else to build. But it's, to me, it's like you said, it's a nice to have, and I think it's an honorific to God to show,
Certainly.
hey, we're meeting to worship you, and we have the ability to build this, and not only that, but to demonstrate that to the rest of the community, that
Right.
this
This
is
is
a
how
place to
proud
work.
we are of our God.
Yes,
Like it's definitely something that I think should be an objective for
right, and
churches. Is like, we have to show how much we love Him by giving the best house we can afford. Um,
right, and it's not like, oh crap, old Osteen, Joel
uh-huh.
Osteen. It's not a private jet. It's not a fancy suit. It's not a bunch of jewelry, and stuff like that. And trappings for a person.
Mhm.
It's for God. It's for the community. Now,
Right, and it's also yeah, it's for the community too. It's something that everybody will get something out of if you're treating your faith right. You
right,
go in you go in there, and it's a gym for your soul. The most important thing, like part of the community, probably.
right,
Um, I don't know. It's uh, and like we are going back to um, how he started off talking about, could it be a graven image, you know, making this structure with all of these images and statues inside of it.
mhm,
Um, so we get the prohibition on no graven images for the sake of worshiping them in and of themselves, like the pagans do, essentially.
right, right.
Um, but then, what, 5 chapters later, they're commanded to build the Ark of the Covenant with these 5 foot tall cherubs made of
Yeah,
gold. And
exactly, because what are you building with the Ark of the Covenant? You're building, and with this ties very much in with where I've been reading, because we just talked about it.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, you're
Stone
about to come up on
artisans,
that.
acacia wood with gold inlay and bronze and silver and very nice fabrics in these specific colors of, and because you're thinking about that is the meeting place with the Lord for the Israelites. So what is church but a meeting place of Christians
Mhm.
to worship and honor the Lord? So again, I, Protestants have to be, my fellow Protestants have to be careful, because we're very quick to put on, to wear images with the cross on it, and to wear cross necklaces. I've done it myself, and I'm not saying that that's an issue. But if you're going to get on somebody for wearing a crucifix or a rosary, or these statues, you have to be able to articulate where that line is that differentiates the two.
And we can keep going from the ark. There's a couple stories later, when all the snakes attack the Israelites. They actually, God commands Moses to build an actual cross with the brazen serpent on it.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Yep.
you remember that one? So, I mean, that's more close to a graven image than pretty much anything else, because it doesn't. Christ hadn't died on the cross yet, and
Right.
there's a snake on it, which I'm not super. I know it can't possibly mean anything evil, and it probably doesn't reflect the snakes that had bitten them.
Right.
There's got to be some kind of different esoteric meaning to the ancient
So
Israelites.
I guess, so from my question as a Protestant to a Catholic, so when you have a statue, and we
Mhm.
won't use Jesus because it's too easy to just say, well, it's Christ, right? Because,
Right,
but
right.
when you have these statues of Mary, or angels, or um the various saints, are y'all doing that as just as an honor? I know that there's the intercession belief
Mhm.
within Catholicism, Mother Mary, pray for us, or Saint George, pray
Right.
for us, that kind of thing. Are they used in that capacity, or is it used to worship, I guess, to worship that particular being?
They're not objects of worship.
Okay.
Um, the way, okay, so I have answers for all of those questions, because it's a very complex issue.
Yeah.
So we first have uh, the issue of why do we, hold these people in such high regard, and that is an important thing that I want to impress upon any listener. They're people. We do not venerate them as we do the Lord God. Second, the statues and images and everything like that. That's another issue. So I think the reason that we remember and keep these special people in our cultural heritage is because they were the ones that we notice were the most Christ-like. We remember them because they did something that that imitated Christ somehow.
Right. Or lived a
If
life that lived a life that was very much an honor or a tribute to God, where it was deserving of, special consideration or something like that, I guess.
right, and so like
I'm trying to say
it's a,
sainthood without using the same definition to define it. That's what
right,
I'm
right.
saying.
So the reason that the lives of the saints are so important is because they are, think of them as like appendices to the life of Christ. It's like Christ gave the perfect example of how we're to achieve heaven,
Mhm.
or how we will if we live this way, we will be granted heaven rather.
Right.
The lives of the saints are like, well, these are all the people who expressed that the teachings of Christ in a different way. So if we pay attention to them, it's like, oh, well, I mean, I'm not a carpenter rabbi in the ancient times in Israel. Like, how else can I possibly do all of the things that Christ did? I can't live a life identical to that.
Right.
Well, you have all of these people who found out what was true, like capital T truth, about Christ's life, and then emulated it in their own little way. Most of the time it is a little way. It's very humble.
Right.
And so when we have a statue or a portrait or a stained glass depiction of them, it's like having a family photograph, because they are in our, Christian ancestry.
Right.
We're all brothers and sisters in Christ.
Exactly.
So it's like, do you remember this person, how he was able to, like St. Patrick, he was able to go to a foreign country as a slave, and he still spread the word of God and was able to convert tons of pagans.
Right.
He didn't do exactly what Christ did, but what he did was Christ-like. And if we can do something that was a little bit Christ-like, like that's an option. Spreading the word of God whenever we can, even if we're a slave.
Okay.
So it's
I feel like it's a different vehicle than Protestants generally use, and I don't know where that veered off. Like I said, I don't know any Lutherans, which is the best. I think is one of the best places to go to source for the break, right? Because Protestants, we didn't just start, being as independent and having some of these views as we had. The initial break was over many other things
mm-hmm.
and on. So I'd love to see where, just the culture of Protestant, of my own Protestant beliefs
and I
changed at that point.
I don't think that the aversion to images is like monolithic throughout all the Protestant faiths. Like
I don't think so. It probably is not.
There's I think there's literally thousands of different types of different flavors of Protestantism.
Right.
And so I think the Lutherans and the Episcopalians will be more high Christianity, they'll look a lot more Catholic in their viewpoints on objects that depict holy people or images and symbols. So
yeah, I think you're probably right there, because and that would be an interesting thing to discuss, actually, because
mm-hmm.
To me, it's, are you worshiping it? Are you presenting it in a way that people who are sharing your belief might be tempted to worship them? And that's not what I think goes on. And that's not one of my hangups with Christianity. It's an easy thing to pick on about it, but
right. Yeah, no. And I get that. Like it could be, it could be dangerous for someone who doesn't know what we're doing to go in there and see all these people lighting a candle in front of St. Catherine of Siena and asking her to pray for us to God,
right.
Asking her for help, when in reality it's more like asking a friend to pray for you, or asking a family member for some help.
So it would be like if I was
we're not praying to them because they're good. We're saying, help us pray to God.
Right.
It's an intercessory or communal type of situation.
Right. Okay. And I would think that some part of that too is like, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong here. So if I'm praying and I've got a picture, because of just the recent, Mother Teresa was sainted, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Saint Teresa, I've got a picture of her, and I was like, okay, I want to be a better person. And I know Jesus did, he did all these great things and he told me how to live this life and this example. And hey, I have a picture of her. This is my reminder of how she did things that were in line with what Christ wanted to do. And I need to look for examples within her life that were part of that spread that, just as that added I guess just as that added example
Mhm.
to,
Yeah,
because
like
I
I
mean,
said, they're the lives of the saints are appendices to
right.
Christ. Like you can get the entire book and go, read the gospel about the life of Christ and get the entire picture, everything you need.
Mhm.
But if you want even more ideas about how you can be a better person and how you can serve God, the appendices are another great source of information.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we honor the folks who or we give attention, we give recognition where it's due to folks who have led a
Mhm.
life that's full of Christ. We do that with people within our congregation as they when they pass away that they were. Can you hear me?
Yeah, my wife
Oh,
just
you just
was calling me a little bit.
um we do this with people when they pass away. We honor they did so much things, or we remember all the ways that they helped us, or they have built the community, stuff like that. um and I think that's important. And I'm not going to get like I said, it's a different, to me it's a different method. I don't necessarily agree that it's I don't think it's idol worship in that regard. I
Mhm.
think that I think that it might, like I said, somebody who is um not paying attention, or new to it, might initially think that, or might be thought into,
Mhm.
brought into that, where that's
It could easily be turned into a
right.
superstition.
But that's part of the responsibility that comes with being a faithful person and looking out for your fellow man. Where you see that, you catch them. Whereas we can do many things. We come across many events in our lives that can trip up our faith
Mhm.
and cost us, or veer us away from Christ. And that's part of the community. I don't like it when I hear people say, um, I don't I don't need a church. I don't need a community to be a good Christian. And yeah, technically you're right. However, you're looking at a best case scenario. So what are you so good at holding yourself responsible and being self-disciplined that you can right yourself? Or are you drifting and you don't know how far you drifted? When I walked away from church, didn't walk away from my faith, when I returned to church and started going back to church, that's when I started realizing, wow, I'm way off center. And that's why
Mhm.
I think that's why I love the idea of going to church every weekend. On the Sunday, you go there, you recenter yourself. Where have I been drifting? Not just a reconnection to God, and not just all the other thing, and then experiencing fellowship and Sunday school and all this stuff, but or learning something new, but also recentering. Gone off? What do I need to correct?
Mhm.
So that's again, that's why I said, to me, that's where the hang up. It's nice in a theoretical discussion to say, well, is one method better than another? It's another thing to say, well, they're technically not part of us. And I don't think that's fair for either side, a fair position for either side to make.
Yeah, I agree. Um, uh, I think like it's definitely important for my expression of our heritage.
Yeah.
But I I don't think it's absolutely necessary to engage with the saints or anything like that.
Right.
It's that's not one of the tenets of Christianity is you have to um,
Right.
do that. But uh, at the end of the day, I think it's a useful tool. It is certainly a useful tool to keep you centered. I think the more influences that I'm able to get through community at my church, through listening to uh, good preaching from a good priest, and
Mhm.
then
Oh yeah.
also studying on my own the Bible, the writings of the good theologians and philosophers, and then reading about the my good good ancestors in Christ is, part of a full Christian experience.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not much different there's not too much difference. I want to say I guess there is a line that you can draw that it's not published in the Bible. But when we look at Paul, which is a very, it's a person, and I'm sure Catholics are like this, but Protestant specifically within my faith, many people look to Paul and Paul's writing when they're looking for the things that he did, what he represents, and how he went to it. And he is after Christ. Christ appears to him, and he's, like I said, he writes the majority of the New Testament. But at the same time, what we look at are the things that he said and the works that he did. Are they in line with what Christ presented? And yes, they are. So when we look at, if that's how we justify the truth behind him and what he said, and not just some dude who's a lunatic who said, yeah, Jesus said that I need to do this stuff, and then he started doing things completely opposite of what Jesus said, or making stuff up as he went along. That's different. And that's what you say. You look for people who have taken what Christ has done and magnified it in a way that it changed an aspect of the world. And we can look at Mother Teresa. She was a household name just for compassion. Her name was synonymous with compassion, with charity, with looking after the homeless, the war torn, all this other things that she did. She's a unique personality. So when the Catholic Church is signing the saint to I guess venerate. I lost you. Raph, you still there? I can hear you.
Hey, hang on.
Okay.
I actually have to go right now.
That's fine.
But it was a pleasure talking to you as always, and
no problem.
I'll catch you later, brother.
No problem. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. All right, that was Raph. He was dealing with a tight schedule. We thought we had a little bit more time, but that's fine. But I like, he set me up for a very good topic, and it wasn't exactly what I thought, but it was still important. What he wanted to talk about, because Raph is a very, I don't want to say, he is a very committed Roman Catholic, and his Bible study and his enthusiasm to learn about Christ is commendable. And we might disagree on a couple of doctrinal issues and maybe some theology involved with that. But I feel like if I'm allowed to go to heaven, Raph's going to be there too, I believe. That's kind of my take on things. And that's why I like, as Christians in Christianity, there is so much more that we can do together if we can put aside some of our differences theologically, and we focus on what is different, or we focus on what is broken and what we can all help, and that's bringing more people to Christ, whether they're doing it the way that the Baptists feel like that it should be done, doing it the way that the Catholics think it needs to be done, doing it, if they're getting into heaven and they're getting in a way that God approves of, then I'm not as concerned about it, because that's not my say there. Are you being saved? Are you being spiritually fed to the point where you are walking a path that's closer to Christ? And we can get into, some of my issues with I don't agree necessarily with the leadership of the Pope. I don't necessarily agree with considerations of bastardization and all that other stuff. Those are things that I take issue with, but I don't think that that's going to keep a person who follows Catholicism out of heaven, right? And I don't want to condemn a person like that. Now, on the other hand, if you, like you said, like Raph said, when you venerate people and you hold them up, and the intention behind that, as he stated, is to look at them as examples in addition to Christ, right? Because Christ, all you need is Christ. All you need is what he's saying. But if it helps a little bit to see a more to see his example kind of made in different aspects of life and in different aspects in history, so that you can pull more understanding and more meaning of it from it and better focus your efforts, then I don't really see there's the problem there. I could be wrong. I mean, I've been wrong about things before, but I don't. To me, that it my my spider senses don't go start going crazy about it. I don't start to feel like. But if I see somebody going trying to equal or pass one of them off as a divine being, like we don't do that, and we don't do that with Old Testament figures. We know that we have a pretty good example. We have a pretty good idea that Moses is probably within God's inner circle of dudes, right? And the same thing with Abraham and other folks in that thing, but they're not divine beings. They're men just like us, and that's why I think when you take your faith from a point of view of humility, you end up having a better understanding of where we're all at, and I think that'll be a good thing. That is a good thing for your walk with Christ. Now, some people might like the less ostentatious appearance and less and fewer trappings in their church, and that's great. But you have to give credit where credit is due. If somebody commissions art or commissions a building or whatnot specifically to honor God and provide a place where, if it's a building, if it's a place for people to gather and understand the majesty and power of God, just through what would it be a trifle to him, but would be a great work of art from us. We were made in his image, and our imagination and our artwork and how we and our talents being put to use specifically in a way to honor us God is commendable. Or if it's a piece of artwork, how many of us have looked at the Last Supper? That's work from commissioned during the Renaissance by the Roman Catholic Church, and that is that is something that we all look upon. There's many depictions of Christ that are pulled from artists and pulled from the Renaissance that we use today as just depictions, so that we can relate. We can put a face to the name, even though the face is probably wrong. It's probably wrong, but it's a way of just putting something there. And if you do that with the intention to bring somebody closer to Christ, and you're not doing something that breaks the fundamentals, like you're not diving into idol worship, you're not taking the Lord's name in vain, you're not doing these things, then if you're not doing these things, then again, it's a work that's commendable. It's a work that's trying to further people to Christ. And like you said, you can pull all that back, even if you don't like the opulency or whatnot. If you have a problem with the trappings, or you say, hey, this is money that they could have spent feeding the poor or housing the homeless, that's all true. But also remember, God put very specific instructions in the Old Testament when it was just for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, that was a singular piece of equipment, but you can also look at King Solomon's temple, which we haven't gotten into yet in our book reading. But if you look at King Solomon's temple and other things, doing great works, building great things as an honor to God, is not outside of biblical history. It's not. So, when I look at things like the cathedral at Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, I'm a Notre Dame fan, right? Look at things like the cathedral at Notre Dame, or, when me and my wife were traveling through Nova Scotia, and we were looking at some of the Catholic cathedrals there. And I see them big and small, but there's a weightiness to it. And I do appreciate that the Catholics have that point of view, that they put a lot of weight. Maybe not all of the Catholics, maybe not some of the people in the hierarchy. There are going to be bad actors everywhere, but we have those in all of the Protestants. We have our problems, right? When you look at the man, the Catholic man who understands his faith with Christ, and it's solid and well founded, he looks at that, he looks at that building and he feels the weight of the importance of God. And I think that's putting his head in the right spot. Different strokes for different folks. And now you can, and I don't want to say that in the Unitarian sense, because I think that the Unitarian outlook is awful and as wrong as you can be. But you look at the disciples and you see that there's very, very many different personality types, and within the disciples, there's many different personality types within us Christians. Not one personality is getting into heaven. We're all different people, just trying to do things, and what works for one person will not work as well for another person. It's kind of like diets. Some diets don't work with one person, and they resonate well with another person. But what's the goal? The goal is to lose weight and be healthier. So if you're not doing a diet that's unhealthy for you, then aren't you getting the task there? The same thing. You might not be worshiping in a way that's the same between the different denominations, but if you're not doing it outside of the Bible, or if you're not breaking biblical tenets, who am I to criticize? Who are we to criticize? Anyway, like to get Raph on. My ultimate goal is to have Raph on a lot, and I think that once he gets into that mode, he can shine in a lot of his thoughts. And once he gets a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera, he's going to be overshadowing what presence I have on it. But my ultimate goal is to convince him to get on and do this as much as possible. But big issue with him is his schedule. He is a very busy man who is going to get even busier. So I am not going to impose this on him. If he's able to do it and he wants to do it, that'll be great. So that'll be my stream for tonight. We'll I said, all right, so some housekeeping changes. First off, we have moved Kristen Beal. We have moved her live stream to Wednesday night. It's going to be Wednesday night at 8 instead of Thursday night at 8 when we initially planned it. There was a scheduling conflict. I'm flexible, especially now because it's still a small channel. I'm flexible, and we'll be fixing that, and she will be on Wednesday. I'm going to put that on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook for everybody to see. Also, I said that tomorrow would be another discussion with Eric Roland. That's my dumb mouth getting ahead of my brain, because we're doing every other week with Eric. So it's not going to be this Tuesday. It's going to be next Tuesday. So tomorrow, since we do not have Eric on, we are going to just go get back into our biblical reading, unless something else comes up, but I don't think so. And then Friday night, we are going to have my friend Liz. She's going to come on and talk to us about women in the Bible, women in church, and her experiences as a mom. We'll see where that conversation goes. So in the meantime, guys, y'all enjoy y'all's Monday evening as best you can. Hopefully your Monday was okay. Hopefully your Monday was awesome. But I know they have a tendency not to be. So anyway, be safe, and I will talk to you. See you guys hopefully tomorrow. Like and subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Anyway, good night, guys. Bye. God bless.